We have a record of this, and we're going to kick off our meeting. So welcome everyone. I'm Russ White. I'm the Executive Director of Lambda Business Association. Thank you for joining us for our February luncheon. We have a double feature today with Councilman Brian Knudsen and Dr. Ian Choe. I think I said that name correctly. We're going to get kicked off with some announcements from our president, Greg Moore.
Thank you and welcome to this fabulous Wednesday. I would like to introduce our board members who make everything happen for us. I'd like to start with Mariel Landry. She's our vice president and she's with Affordable Cremation. We've got Pam Jones who's our treasurer and Pam Jones Law. We have Eric Abram with Mobile Medic CPR, and if you need training, he does a fabulous job of that. Alon with Alon's Commercial Real Estate, Rick Sheffield with Sheffield Spice and Tea and Mass Mutual. We've got Frank Herman, our engineer and secretary. We've got Gary Vrooman, who's our executive, with Palm Mortuary. Russ White, our executive director, and myself, Gregory Moore with State Farm and the board. I'd also like to take a moment and touch on our first Toastmasters meeting in February. That was near and dear to Terry Wiltsey's heart, and Lambda Linguist put together a special event. We spoke about networking. We had Steve Goldstein on, and we had approximately 26 people show up for that. So that was really a great event. We've got another regular Toastmasters meeting coming up on February 15th. That's going to be at 6 p.m. And then another special event for our March meeting or May meeting. No, it's March 1st. With that, I'd like to move into our regular portion of this meeting with Brian Knudsen. Brian, I have seen you on the news several times in a good way, and you're talking about some of the benefits that have come about and some of the collaboration with everything that has happened around COVID. So with that, our Las Vegas City Councilman, Brian Knudsen.
And I am very grateful to be here, and Gregory, excuse me, has a business in Ward 1. I drive by it every day and I see your name on a big billboard, and you are my insurance agent, so thank you for that as well. I just want to thank Lambda and the association and everyone who puts work into making something like this come to fruition, because it's a lot of work. So for the volunteers and board officers that put time and energy into thinking through how to bring people together, it is the most important thing, and especially during a pandemic, coming together is what's critical. To Russ, he's been very active as an executive director and actively engaging with our office and the city, and I'm really grateful because it's these ideas that'll come out of you all that'll help push our city forward, and hopefully in a direction that brings us out of a pandemic and an economic crisis sooner rather than later. Just by way of introduction, I represent Ward 1 in the city of Las Vegas. The medical district is a large component of the area I represent, and I get the very fortunate opportunity to work with lots of really great business owners, and some okay elected officials, some not so okay elected officials in different jurisdictions. And the collaboration that happens because of a pandemic is definitely something that I'm focused in on. So how the city, the county, the state, I work with all of them, how we can do a better job at serving residents. And I think as it relates to Lambda, how we can do a better job serving businesses. We have an absolute requirement now. It's my responsibility to make sure that we do everything in our power to make sure your businesses are successful. And so with that, I'm grateful for Lambda, Russ, for the time that you took to invest in thinking through ideas with us. I'm grateful, and we'll continue to be open and available. Gregory, for my insurance, thank you for that. And thank you for being here, having your business in Ward 1. I'm gonna put in the chat my contact information. If anyone has any need to reach out to me, you can text me or email me or whatever you're comfortable with. And I'm more than happy to jump in and see if I can be helpful. and Carl Catarata is on this call as well. He works for me, and he's the reason I end up in the media as much as I do, because he really makes sure that we're trying to push out as many good stories in the media as we possibly can, because the world is full of negative right now. So the more that we can do together and in a positive light, I think we all need that. So Russ, thank you for the opportunity. Gregory, thanks for everything, and for all of your time and energy making this community better. I very much appreciate you. And I'm going to put my contact information in here if I can figure out how to do that really quickly. But if anybody has any questions or needs anything from me, I'll be here for a few more minutes, and then I have to jump off.
So do you want to open up for any questions?
So Brian, what are some of the collaborations between the different entities in Las Vegas that you're somewhat excited about? I know the homeless is a big deal.
The most recent is on housing assistance. The CARES allocation to the state will be jointly coordinated between the state and the county and all the cities. So it'll make it a little bit less burdensome for people. There'll be one place to go if you need rental assistance. So that's one area it's different. For those of you who haven't paid attention, there's generally some level of conflict between the city and the county. But for this instance, there's not. The medical district, I mentioned, I represent that area. There's significant collaboration around the School of Medicine. And on a very regular basis, I coordinate calls between UNLV and 6 of the deans of health-related fields. So the School of Medicine, the School of Dental Medicine, School of Nursing, School of Occupational Health, School of Liberal Arts, School of Education. I work with them very regularly and work with the county because they represent UMC Hospital, which is a big component of our teaching medical practice here. So those are some of the big areas that I tend to focus in on. If you live in the area I represent, there's going to be massive construction along Rancho and Charleston to really build out the infrastructure of the medical district. That'll happen over the next 2 to 3 years. And that's a very big collaboration between the city, county, and RTC, the Regional Transportation Commission. So those are a few of the things that I'm very actively engaged in, but there's lots of other things that are going on too.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate everything that you do for the city and Ward 1. It's a fabulous place to have a business, in my opinion. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Brian, do you have an update from the city's perspective on where we are with COVID?
I wish I had really awesome news. A lot of it really depends on the federal government's allocation of those vaccines. So about 2 weeks or so ago, we were startled, just along with everybody else, when we heard that the previous administration had not stockpiled enough vaccines for the country. And so as soon as we get the enough vaccines into the community, the health district and all the jurisdictions are really ready to ramp up and start vaccinating as many people as we possibly can. So if you have the opportunity to get vaccinated, I think it's our best interest. That'll help mitigate the impacts of COVID faster. And as soon as we have vaccines coming in from the federal government, you'll see a lot more opportunity for vaccinations within our valley.
And at one point we had CARES Act funds available from the city for small businesses. Are those funds depleted? Or do you have any other references for new funds that might be coming down the pike for small businesses within the city limits?
The city depleted their funds in about 2 weeks. We had an enormous request from small businesses, and our funding was primarily around PPE loans, so the protective equipment, the shields, really for small businesses. The state just launched another small business loan program. So Russ, I'm going to send you that information so that you can distribute it out to your membership. It just was announced, maybe a day or so ago, and it's a brand new program that the state just announced.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have any other questions? I know Brian has to get back to some of his other duties. So if we have any other questions from the audience, you can ask them or post them in the chat.
Brian, Gary Vroman here from Palm Mortuary. I just got off a meeting with Spotlight, which is senior services here in town. And the biggest problems that the seniors seem to be facing is housing, low income housing. I mean, they're just losing their housing, and we've had people couch surfing for as much as 3 to 6 months for their seniors trying to find a income. Is the city approaching any services in that area? Because it's been a problem for more than, well, several years, particularly for seniors.
So I appreciate the question. Of every day that I spend in City Hall, about 50% of my time is spent on housing. It's a tough issue that I'm committed to working on. Actually, we just worked on a press release with Nevada Hand. There's new units coming online at Decatur and Alta and Meadows. So there's about 200 senior unit housings that are going to be coming online there. They just broke ground about a week ago. So that's one opportunity. There's several more opportunities over the next 2 years or so. The city has allocated about $20 million towards low income housing that'll really occur in the heart of the downtown core in Ward 3. It's Councilwoman Olivia Diaz's ward. And then there'll be additional units coming into Ward 1. There's a senior housing complex that's market rate that's going in at Lindell and Charleston. And then there's another unit going in right behind the Meadows Mall. Is it enough? No, not even close. We have about 60,000 people on a waiting list for the housing authority.
Right.
And so the need is significant. The process is challenging, but we're chipping away at it day in and day out, trying to figure out if there's additional paths to take.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question also about seniors and vaccines. Just a lot of them having a hard time getting online to get an appointment. And I know that it's been opened up, for second shots for walk-ins. Is there anything else being offered to seniors to help them schedule other than going online?
So I will send to Russ as well. There's a phone number to call now. The state just launched a call center campaign. So it's a 1-800 number that's open 7 days a week where people can call in and schedule. And that goes statewide. So they're able to pinpoint which county you live in to figure out. If you're in Southern Nevada, it's Southern Nevada Health District.
That's great. Thank you.
I'll send you both those pieces of information, the small business loans and the phone number for vaccines.
Got a question for you too. My wife and I both had our first shot. We qualified through our store with being food handlers. I wouldn't qualify for age yet because Nevada's still at 70 instead of 65 like a lot of states. So I had to, we got it the other way. And when I was at Cashman last Friday getting my first one, it was amazing how many older people were there that there's no way that they were in the group that would say necessarily qualify for like the community support. And they should have been like the 70 plus. So whatever, I'm hoping they weren't turned away. The Army staffing, the Cashman were phenomenal. I mean, because I got blown off the first time a week before, even though I was there in the right class, they said, well, something or other, and they just threw me right away from Western High. But I'm seeing all these like seniors who, they should be going to, the center specifically for 70 plus, unless maybe they were qualified there. But it's something where, because there seems to be a lot of people who are trying to sneak in, I don't say sneak in, like in the wrong category of that. Why hasn't Nevada yet gone to 65 and under? I know that, a lot of it had to do with supply, manning the sites, stuff like that. But the process I went through at Cashman, it took me 2 hours. But once I was in line, it just moved right through, and other needing about 15 minutes to reload the doses out of the container inside. It was, done in a heartbeat. I was very impressed with it. And so I guess I'm trying to see if these seniors are trying to get in one way or another, maybe they aren't 70 yet. But why hasn't any idea why Nevada hasn't dropped it to 65 as the feds are saying they should do, but we haven't done it yet in Nevada.
Yeah, so the short answer to that is the supply is a big issue. There is no committed number of vaccines that are coming in on a regular basis. And so in the beginning, the reason why we created, or the governor created, 2 different lanes, which would have allowed for a faster distribution of vaccines. When he created those 2 lanes, it was based on the assumption that the federal government would be shipping about 100,000 doses a week, and we could get through both lists relatively quickly. As soon as the announcement kind of hit the airwaves, right around that second week of January, when the announcement came out that the amount of vaccines really wasn't stable, we dropped from our expectation of 100,000 to 15 to 25,000, and that drastically changed the whole logistical plan. And so there are large pop-up sites. There are some strike teams going into senior homes. The challenge is, for when they set up those logistics, is how do you turn somebody away? Because we still have a goal of vaccinating as many people as quickly as we possibly can. You don't want to turn people away, and there's no perfect answer. If we had a number of doses that were coming in regularly, I think the system would be a little bit make more sense. But it's a different amount every week, and it's hard for the health district to plan how to administer those.
One other observation is my wife got hers, let me see, say a week and a half ago, or maybe 2 weeks ago, on January 28th. And so unlike me at Cashman, where they had a QR code, and you scanned it and signed up right there, she was given the date she would schedule it by. So she went on the health district site. She wasn't able to get us her second dose appointment till like almost 8 weeks out, like the middle of March. Like, supposed to have been like February 18th. She was out to like March 18th, which would be outside the recommended area. And so, but at Cashman with QR code, it was good. So maybe it was just a logistics also. And I don't know whether all the other sites have that QR to, hopefully get right into it. Because there was some guy sitting there in Cashman who went to the regular site, and he was like in 2 months out, 3 months out. So the Army guy told him to use the QR. He went in and he scheduled it right away, as I did. So my wife called the health district on Friday, because her second dose would be outside the recommended period for the Pfizer, and she was told to check out Walgreens, who are now coming into the Pfizer loop. And so I was on it like all day, all night. And all of a sudden it did open up at Walgreens to get in, because their site was so inundated. And she was able to move her appointment back to February 18th. So it's a week from, week from now, to actually get it within the recommended period. So it's good that they're opening up the doses in that. So it seems like the flow is getting better. And so I think it's just more logistics type of stuff. So the second dose seems to have some flaws in it too. And I don't know what the problem is there, but it could just be the supply, manning the sites. The Pfizer has to be kept so cold. I don't know. That's just kind of like a, FYI information, that there's still some flaws out there that hopefully, some people won't be exposed by not being able to get their second dose soon enough. So, and we both have our, I'm going back to the center at my right time too.
I think the flaws are sad, but it's a true statement. Everything you said is absolutely true. The second dose makes it difficult, and the number of doses coming in make it difficult. And so trying to schedule a comedy of errors, the health district had a system-wide failure in their technology that made it difficult for people to schedule appointments, which is why the state is jumping in to help out with a call center for people to get their appointments. And I would say this publicly, I'll say it privately, I'll say it with you all. This has been an incredibly challenging situation for every elected official, every person on the ground, every citizen. It's the first time we've all gone through a pandemic before. And I think looking backwards, there's about 1,000 things we could all do differently. So I would take the blame and responsibility for failures at the health district, as I think all elected officials should do. We have a lot of work to do to make it better, and I'm hopeful that we can get it better in the future.
And I was supposed to get my second dose yesterday, and I went there and I had an appointment and was told to go away and come back tomorrow or Friday. And basically they just don't have the doses to give out. And so that's just, I think I'm just out of the doses.
And if Frank, that's the name at the bottom of the screen. If you're able to, if I can get your contact information, I don't want you to go without that second dose. So let me know and I can connect with you with the health district or UMC or wherever you got it to make sure you get your second dose, because the timing of it really does matter.
Yeah, I have to go back to the convention center
Okay.
for my dose, and the woman gave me the instructions on how you cheat and get in. So I've already been told what to do to sneak in.
I won't tell you to cheat, but good for you. Do what you got to do.
I don't want to use the word cheat. She just told me the trick to use.
Do what you got to do. I understand that.
Brian, thank you so much for joining us today. I know you have a busy schedule, so we will let you get back to the wonderful work that you do for us, and appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you all very much. I appreciate it, and have a great day.
Absolutely.
We're going to pass the program over to Eric Abram for the next segment. Eric, you have the floor.
All right. Hello, everybody. I just wanted to introduce our next speaker. Our guest speaker is Dr. Ian Choe. And just to tell you a little bit about Dr. Choe, he graduated from the University of Iowa, completed his internal medicine residency at Providence St. Vincent Medical Center in Portland, Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
His interest is in area of medicine, specifically digital health and e-health, which includes telemedicine, wearables, systems engineering via HIPAA compliant communications tools, and point of care decision support tools. So he is currently the lead physician at Dignity Health Subdivision at Optum Care Nevada United Health Group. I met Dr. Choe through my business, offering him his AHA renewals, and he was very gracious to accept my invite to come out and talk to all of us about, from a medical standpoint, where we are at with COVID-19 and any recommendations he might have for us business owners going forward into 2021. And with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Choe.
Thank you.
Hello, all. Thanks for having me. Let me just go ahead and see if I can share a screen with you. I actually prepared a PowerPoint presentation for, and host disabled participant screening sharing. So whoever the host is amongst you, if you can actually allow me to share the screen.
You are good to go.
Okay, perfect. Now it seems that I can actually share the screen. Okay, all right, let's see if this will allow me to share the screen. I'm going to go to the slide. Can you see the presentation okay?
Yes.
Okay, you see the entire screen is all right. And then let me go ahead and see if I can record this just for the purpose of just monitoring my own presentation, if you don't mind.
Of course, we're also recording it.
Okay, great. So again, my name is Ian Choe, and I actually do not work for Dignity Health at all. And I'm not sure if there's a miscommunication. That's probably my fault. And but I work for Optum Care Nevada. But today's presentation, I'm actually presenting as a. I apologize. This is actually not the right. Give me 1 second. Sorry about that. Just want to make sure that. Okay, sorry. Okay, here we go. Sorry about that. Found the right PowerPoint, and so let me go ahead and share it now. And let me know if you can see this. Okay, you can see it. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So yes, I do work for Optum Care Nevada, but today I'm presenting as the representative or the person who represents my nonprofit organization called Shin-A Foundation. It's actually named after my grandmother, and we actually do work mostly in a country called Madagascar. And Madagascar is the second or third poorest country in the world, and we actually go on a mission there at least once a year. And we started in 2019, and because of pandemic, we couldn't go last year. So here we go. So let me go ahead and tell you about COVID-19 and going forward from a medical point of view. This presentation is rather quick, and then we'll have time for questions and comments at the end, but you can always interrupt me if you have urgent questions that you want to ask. Okay. So I just want to do a disclaimer really quickly. And so anything that I'm talking about today is general educational purposes only, and has nothing, it shouldn't be construed or used as a personal medical advice for any of you. And disclosure, I have no financial disclosure to do here. Okay, and the quote that I'm going to use is actually something that I saw yesterday on Facebook. As the island of your knowledge grows, the horizon of your yet to know expands. The direct translation is the horizon of your ignorance, but I didn't want to use that word because it has a bad connotation. So the horizon of your yet to know expands. It's something that I realized in my mid 50s, that the more I study, the more I realize that there are a lot of things I don't know. So let me go ahead and tell you the subtopics, the 4 topics that I want to discuss really quickly. So vaccines, okay, and variants, and then how it will end, how the pandemic will end. And the related question is that will there be another pandemic within our lifetime, like the current one? Okay, so let's talk about vaccines. And so what we're trying to achieve with vaccines is that we're trying to make IgG antibodies. So there are 5 different antibodies that we know of, and IgG is the most common one, and it's this what they call titer. So if you start working for a healthcare company, then they will ask you to do titers, measles, mumps, rubella. Those are IgG antibodies, and the end goal of the vaccine is so that you will have IgG antibodies against COVID-19. Okay, and you'll also hear about, I'm sure you've heard about, the monoclonal antibodies that are made by Regeneron, a pharmaceutical company, or Eli Lilly, which is another pharmaceutical company. So the monoclonal antibody infusion, that antibody is also IgG. So these are millions and millions of molecules of IgGs that will capture the viruses in your body and will lower the viral load, so that your immune system actually can get rid of them more efficiently. And so another goal of the vaccine is to create memory cells in the immune system, composed mostly of T cells and B cells. And these memory cells will recognize COVID down the line, a year later, 2 years later. The Moderna CEO claimed that the vaccine lasts 2-3 years, and it's not because IgG will be around, in sufficient amount that long. I mean, maybe, but then for a lot of people, actually, IgG level drops off. But then your memory cells are still there and will regenerate the IgG cells or IgG antibodies if you get exposed to the same COVID virus. So IgG looks like that. It looks like Y shape, and as you can see here, this is a virus and this is actually a toxin. Then they capture them with one of the ends like that, and then they bring in the more powerful, much bigger cells like macrophages and then natural killer cells, and then they release the enzyme to kill the viruses, and that's how IgG works. And then this is actually, as you can tell, there's an artistic rendering of how IgG, these little Y-shaped IgGs, are attaching to the spike protein, and spike protein is the target for the IgG that will be generated by the vaccines. Okay, so vaccine generates IgGs. IgGs will target the spike proteins. And the reason why you need second dose is that after 28 days, the second dose will actually bump up the tapering IgGs and will maintain the IgGs for a long time. And I don't know if any of you got the second dose, but second dose is tough for a lot of people. My wife and I both had second doses, and the next day we had low-grade fever up to 99.9, and then body aches the whole day. So how does this vaccine work? So it's mRNA, and as I was just writing an article for a Korean newspaper in the Bay Area, for some people, the new technology mRNA is something they do not want to be the recipient of because they don't know what this new technology will have in terms of long-term side effects. But for some of us who are familiar with cell biology, mRNA vaccine is actually natural course of the next stage of vaccine development. It is actually fascinating, and it's a breakthrough for us because it only makes sense. And it's extremely unlikely that mRNA will be integrated back to DNA where it normally comes from. So in this case, they give mRNA that will generate the spike proteins of the virus that will be attacked by or that will cause the formation of the IgG antibodies. And so, and if this link right here, what if my immune system is suppressed or compromised? What if I'm pregnant? What if I'm allergist? What if I already had COVID-19? They're all patiently answered by the doctor or professor from Emory University, and it's all in the video here. And in the interest of time, I will just let you know that there are these videos that you can watch at your leisure. And let me just tell you something about vaccine, because I do know that there are quite a few of us who are actually quite hesitant about vaccine because it's a new technology, and there's a lot of conspiracy theories out there as well. So this person is his name is Mark O'Brien, and anybody who actually went to Berkeley in the mid 80s and late 80s has seen him in the streets operating his motorized gurney from his home in South Berkeley all the way to the campus. And he's a unfortunate victim of polio. And I'm old enough, and I'm sure in the amongst 15 of us, we know some people, some friends or some relatives who had polio, but under 40 years of age, we do not see polio patients anymore. And that's because of vaccine that Jonas Salk developed in the United States. And of course, Jonas Salk is famous for, some other reasons as well. But one reason is that when he was asked, hey, who has patent on this patent, he said, you cannot patent the sun. And so there's nobody who owned the patent. It was for the public good. And the other thing that I want to always talk about in a presentation like this is that in 1783, the Montgolfier brothers in France, they actually were able to successfully launch hot air balloon into the air, but it landed in a remote farming region away from the city. And the peasants, the farmers, thought that it was something really horrible. So they came out and using pitchforks destroyed the hot air balloon because they didn't understand what that was. So this is something that I read about while studying physics, 20 some years ago, but it always stayed with me that people have this intrinsic fear about things that we don't understand. So again, I don't think that there's any hardcore conspiracy theorist amongst you, but then for a lot of conspiracy theorists, the logic to me is reverse rather than it moves in the right direction. For example, in New York City, you see the umbrella stands like this often. Would you say that umbrella sellers like her or him is causing the rain so that he'll benefit from it? So that's actually how a lot of conspiracy theories think, that these are all devised or concocted by the people who will benefit from what's going on. So the cause and effect is reversed in a rather unexpected way, as if the umbrella sellers are causing the rain so that they can benefit from the umbrella by selling the umbrellas. So we talked about vaccines, and let's talk about variants now. Okay, so the one variant that we are we're cautious about, or we're watching carefully, is the one from Britain, B11K. Okay, so it first started out in November, and it's more infectious, but not necessarily more virulent. So not a lot of people actually die from this at the same rate or at a lower rate, but it is about 30% more infectious. Okay, and has it landed in the United States? And it has. And the state officials are watching it carefully, and then most of them are in California. There's some in Nevada as well. So well, what if there are variants now? Then we know I already got vaccines. So should I get more vaccines? And to protect against these new variants is always the logical question. The answer is, at least for this particular variant from Britain, you don't need to, because Moderna, at least the Moderna vaccine, which is actually the most prevalent form of vaccine in Nevada, it will protect you against this variant. But the one from South Africa, you may actually need a booster. So the next question is that how it will end. Okay. Well, for us to know with some degree of certainty how this pandemic will end, we can always look at how the other pandemics end. How did the previous ones end? We don't have to go to 1918 one, the Spanish flu one, because it actually ended the way that we all know about, and it introduced. Some people even say that it introduced the Roaring '20s as a rebound. So the first plague that that everyone hears about, or that is significant, is the Black Death, or the plague, the Yersinia pestis, bubonic plague. And so it actually lasted many years, okay, 8 years and so forth. And it actually stayed with us. And in 2020, last year, the bubonic cases were seen in Mongolia, and there was some fatality as well. So the point of this is that the bubonic plagues actually never went away, but it actually became exceedingly rare to contract bubonic plague because of the advancement in antibiotics, because the plague is actually bacterial. Okay, and then there's also smallpox, and the first recorded case of smallpox is say 3rd century BC in Egypt, and as you know, that the smallpox was you can think of it as the incipient stage of vaccination, because people noticed that smallpox, although it can be a deadly disease, up to 30% of the people who get it, the milkmaids, were people who worked with cows, were resistant to it, or they don't get the smallpox, and then they actually got pustules from the smallpoxes in cows and scratched it, and they even had people inhale it through their nose, and then they became resistant. So this first attempt at vaccination, and in fact, the word vaccination, vac, is actually comes from the Latin cows, because of that story, or because of that history. Now, the 1959 WHO, the World Health Organization, launched a global smallpox eradication program, and it has been eradicated. So the two stories that I'm actually presenting is that one pandemic, so to speak, or one plague actually stayed with us until now, although it became exceedingly rare. Now, the second pandemic, or second highly infectious disease, people are able to eradicate it from the face of the earth. What course will this take, right? What course will this pandemic take? You don't actually have to look at Spanish flu in 1918. You can actually look at SARS, MERS, and COVID-19, because they are all coronavirus. SARS was coronavirus, MERS was coronavirus, and this one, of course, is coronavirus. And if you look at the time period, there was 2003, 2004 for the first SARS coronavirus. MERS virus, Middle Eastern respiratory syndrome, was 2012 through 2015. And then the current one is actually going on the second or third year now, because it occurred in late 2019. So will there be another pandemic within our lifetime? Well, fortunately, what there is what's called law of regression, meaning that this pandemic was so bad, okay, the pandemic reached all corners of the earth, that the next one will most likely be regional and less in scale. And in fact, the law of regression is represented here in this flu deaths in the United States. I don't know if you all remember, but 2017, 2018, the winter of 2017 and 2018 was the very worst in terms of how this flu severity. I remember that winter vividly because I was managing the community cares and it was horrible. And as you can see here, the next flu season was much more subdued. And you can even predict that without COVID, without the pandemic, this winter that we're passing now, 2020, 2021, may have been really bad flu season. If you look at the pattern here, right? So whatever comes after the really bad one is actually much more subdued, and that is law of regression. And so I actually included a video here of a Yale professor who predicts how this current pandemic will end. This immediate phase, he believes, will end next and at the end of this year, 2021. And the intermediate phase will begin when people are cautious, they're not still going out for 1 to 2 years, and then 2024, just as the Spanish flu pandemic in 1918 introduced the roaring 20s, there will be a rebound post-pandemic period in 2024 and onward. So if there's any practical advice do I have to offer you, and I do. This is actually not as a physician, but as somebody who loves physics and chemistry, a scientist, I have practical advice to offer you. Okay, so that what are the advices? Just think about the physics laws that govern the movement of the air, because this is airborne particles. If there are airborne particles, then naturally, or by corollary, by logical deduction, these viral particles will have to be governed by the laws that govern air, right? And so there are Graham's law for gas diffusion and Boyle's law, and there's also the concept of viral load, which is actually not exactly physics or chemistry, but then the more viral load you have, the more severe your infection will be, right? So Graham's law has to do with mass. Boyle's law has to do with pressure and volume. So what do you mean by all this? Well, first of all, if you are in enclosed space, try to leave the windows open, doors open, and have a fan going on so that there's a constant movement of the air. So changing the pressures inside where you are. And just remember that there is a Venturi effect, which is also physics law, that if there's a movement of air, movement of any fluid or air, then the pressure drops. Pressure of that area drops, and therefore the surrounding pressure will move in, therefore constantly pushing the viruses that are airborne away from you or diffuse them, so that the viral load that you inhale will be lessened. So I would actually always leave the doors, windows open, and have the fan going. And then one more thing is this right here, okay? If you can look at the photos, this is actually the living room. Eric has been to our house several times, or 2 or 3 different times. And as you can, this is actually our dining area. And you can see one on the left, okay, is after I after I turned on the humidifier for many hours. And then one on the right is not. This is actually more recent. I took these photos to show people that what you can see with your own unaided eyes, what humidifier does for the ambient air inside the enclosed space. Okay, normally, without the sunlight that is coming through the windows, you won't be able to see that there are water particles that are much, much, much smaller than the viral particles of virions. So virion means that one virus that is intact and that can actually infect you, potentially infect you, right? This water particles that you can see through the sunlight or with the sunlight, because you cannot really see them without the sunlight well, right? So these will actually pose a barriers for the virions to move through the air. And in fact, you learn in basic chemistry that any water molecules, H2O, they have what's called hydrogen bonding, and anything with polarity, water will stick to it. So, well, is there any empirical evidence to this? And then, no. There's only one supercomputer simulation that show that if you increase humidity of a room from 30% to 70%, then the viral transmission rate goes down by half or 50%. But then, it's actually nothing really empirical. But then if you must stay in enclosed space, then use humidifier so that the ambient air will be filled with the water molecules. And if you understand the physics and chemistry, then it will make sense to you, why that actually may deter the transmission of the airborne particles. So that's the practical advice that I have for you. Any questions or comments for me?
That was an amazing presentation. One of the questions that I have is quite trivial. It's, when does this become COVID-20 or COVID-21 or COVID-22? What governs the 19 or the suffix of the nomenclature?
That as far as I understand, the first time that it was discovered was November or December of 2019. And so, and that I think is the reason why they called it the COVID-19, the coronavirus disease 19, because it was first detected in November or December of 2019.
Do you have any other questions from the audience?
I have a question. Dr. Choe, I appreciate you speaking to the group today. I'm curious, for people with concerns regarding the second vaccine and getting it on time, can you give us your best advice on that, and when somebody should be, maybe looking at a danger zone, like how long people should wait before, they might run into trouble with the second vaccine?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, and that actually was brought up by another member, and he was having trouble securing the second vaccine for his wife. So if you actually look at this graph here, as it's actually coming from, I believe, coming from the Moderna study, that after the first vaccine, then you will actually notice that there is a point when the IgG antibody starts tapering off. Yeah. So
I apologize, Dr. Choe. I stopped your screen share. Can you reshare?
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Yeah. So let's go ahead and do the screen share. Share screen. Host disabled the participant screen.
You can try again.
Ah, there you go. Okay. So let's go ahead and do this.
There we go.
Okay. And so then here we go. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So the so it's just a side note. There's a side note, is that so the COVID-19 actually is a very, very good opportunity for us to know what it is that we have to do as a healthcare professionals. So when Ebola virus broke, that's a few years ago, the doctors were equipped with the knowledge and skills to handle Ebola virus outbreak. Were the doctors from Cuba? They thought. There's one article that I read, and the reason is that the Cuban doctors are actually very good with knowledge and so forth, but they don't have anything. They don't have the modern equipments that we have in hospitals and clinics and so forth. So they actually, there's one report that I read that they routinely use their own mouth to suck, suck pus out of someone's lung, for example, because they don't have a negative pressure device who can actually generate the negative pressure, right? And then even patients get grossed out by it. Hey, that was really gross. It's like, yeah, I'm trying to save your life. So these doctors who actually know the basic skills, they are very good at physics, chemistry, and medical knowledge. They are the ones who can actually solve new problems that they had never encountered before, right? And then from the very beginning of the COVID pandemic, that has been the case throughout. What do we do now? What do we do now? That actually has been the case all throughout. And then, and then the answer to that question, what do we do now, is that go back to the basics, go back to what we know, okay, from previous cases, and then we extrapolate the knowledge and then apply to the current situation, right? The same thing happens here. Now, our company, okay, started vaccinating people. Today's Wednesday, so 2 days ago. So we're talking about non-healthcare providers and then the frontline police people and the first responders, right? So but we expect there will be a lot of different cases that we had never seen. I'm actually going to show you something that I saw, all right? And I'm not trying to scare you at all, because this is actually rare. But will there be reaction to vaccine? Well, from previous, we know that most patients who pass out will be vasovagal. They will be fine. They'll be young people. So we know how to take care of them. We know how to take care of them very well, because it's something we see all the time. And we've seen a couple of them already. But what if, right, we see some other things like, anaphylactic reaction that, can it happen? It was very unlikely, because, it's very unlikely that mRNA, because for anaphylactic reaction to occur, there has to be sensitization. But if it's a brand new entity, brand new substance that is being used, how could there be sensitization, right? So we can actually take comfort in that. But what if somebody presents with this day after vaccination? It's an infection. It's probably cellulitis and so forth. And then we know, how to take care of it, because based on our previous encounters with someone with a similar infection. Go back to the basics. Well, what are you saying all this for? I just asked you about the second dose. Well, we have to go back to what we know about IgG formation and their stability after a normal vaccination process. So fortunately, we do have data, and internet is, replete with data that you want to know about COVID. And then if you can see here, the titer drops off, and beginning the 15 days or so. Okay, you can see here, right? But then if your wife is, say, 60 years old, then she will actually belong right here. So 15 days, okay, titer starts dropping off here, but not so much. And I really cannot tell you what these different lines mean. I think there's actually the age distributions, right? So then, let's say that the worst case scenario, it will drop off, okay? And then she could only get the second vaccination on the 5 weeks from the first one. Well, how about it here? 6 weeks after the first one. Okay, and then that's actually, that's outside the recommendation, and that's the only way. Okay, there's no way that we could get the vaccine sooner than 6 weeks from the first one. And should we or should we not get it? I can definitely tell you that no doctors would know the answer definitively. No doctor would not know what the answer would be, but then we can extrapolate. We can use our logic, okay, to extrapolate whether or not your wife would need that vaccine, or can she get it safely 6 weeks after the first dose. So let's extrapolate. Let's do a thought experiment. This is just thought experiment. This is not a personal medical recommendation to anybody. All right. So if this dropping off, okay, continues at the same rate, then it will be at approximately this level, yeah. And this is a logarithmic scale, so is actually still, this is actually more than, okay, 10 to the third power, right? And it's actually close to 10 to the fourth power. And by the way, this is per mil, right? So this is actually a high number of IgGs, right? Will the second vaccine, okay, cause another spike in IgG and will maintain her doses, maintain the titer, versus it will be so low by then the memory cells will not have formed, and getting the second dose is like fool's errand. It's futile. She missed the outside window of opportunities. I would actually have to think about it. I'd have to think about it whether or not I would recommend the second dose for her at 6 weeks interval, or just go ahead. It's better to get that second dose now, even if it's 6 weeks past the first dose and 2 weeks outside the normal route. I don't know. I'll actually have to, talk to the individual patients, and something tells me that I probably should not venture too much. But then it's something that you will need to individualize after you consult with a patient. But again, in the grand scheme of things, that what do we do now? This is not something that we expected happens all the time and will continue to happen until this thing is over. We, the Southwest Medical, the Optum Care is the largest and probably the most well-funded medical group in Las Vegas, because we're a part of United Health Group, which is Dow 30 company, right? We ourselves had trouble getting enough vaccines for all our patients who are already pre-registered. We're talking about high-risk patients, because when you call Moderna, they say, oh, well, I'm sorry though, we don't have enough vaccines. So wait a minute, but you promised. Well, I'm sorry, we just don't have it. And what can you say, right? And I mean, I'm just telling you that actually happens for the most privileged medical group in town as well. Okay, any other questions?
Dr. Choe, I just want to thank you. That was an extremely educational experience. And I'm really grateful for you being here with us today for this virtual event.
Oh, no problem. How can I get the recording?
I'll make sure you get a copy of it.
All right, then. Thank you so much. Okay. All right, then.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for attending our luncheon today. This would be much more enjoyable if we were in person and enjoying a meal, which I think might happen in a few months now that we have vaccines trickling in. We look forward for you joining us next month, second Wednesday in March. We're still working on a topic for that, I believe. We do have one community announcement. The AFAN AIDS Walk is coming up. This will be a virtual walk. They're not doing in person this year, so visit afanlv.org if you'd like to get more information. And health and happiness to everyone. Greg, do you have any final announcements?
I do not. It was fabulous information shared. Thank you so very much. It was wonderful.
Yeah. Thank you all for joining. We'll see you next month.
Thank you.
Thank you.